Welcome to the Rise Up Sessions, a psychology podcast about real life, real change, and the decisions that shape us.
Welcome back. We are season 2. We made it to season 2. This is season 2, episode 1. Happy summer. And today we are going to talk about why good therapists fail as business people. That was me. That was me in the very beginning. That was me. Don't for one second think that I'm trying to preach to anything, to anyone that, excuse me, that I didn't go through. Just want to make sure that this is good. Yeah, okay. Sorry about that. So I think the conspiracy theorists that I've spoken to will say that the reason that we are not taught business in grad school is because they kind of want to keep the economy at a certain level. They want to make sure that people do and don't do certain things and know certain things, so they don't teach this stuff in grad school for that reason. I don't know that I believe that. I don't know that I want to believe that. So I'll say that they don't teach this shit in grad school. Let's make that very clear. They do not teach this shit in grad school. It doesn't mean that it can't be taught. It doesn't mean it can't be learned. And someone like me had to learn it by doing and doing it a lot and making all of the mistakes. But I think people don't have the idea. No, they have the idea that they want to do it, but they have no idea how to go from being excellent at one thing to being willing to be terrible at something else and it be okay. We talked about this a little bit last season, the idea of not wanting to admit that I'm bad at something. I personally hate that. I hate when it's understood that I'm not good at something, because then you'll know. God forbid you should know. And it's really humbling, and it really is about learning to be willing to admit, allergies, I'm sorry. Being willing to learn and to admit that I don't know, and to make the mistakes, and to do all of the things that are okay to make a mistake in, because we're brand new at this. And because I'm excellent at cooking does not mean I'm going to be excellent at fixing cars, not unless I learn how to fix cars. And you would think that fixing cars would be part of what they taught you in cooking school, because you need to be able to drive to go to school, to go to cooking school. And you need to be able to drive to go back and forth from work where you're going to be cooking. But the point of that metaphor is, business in grad school doesn't really have a place, does it? Well, not when it comes to being a social worker. They're not going to teach you how to be a business owner when they want you to be a therapist. So, look, does it make sense what the conspiracy theorists are saying? Maybe. But I'm not going to let that stop me. What I'm going to let that do is inspire me. Because people, I did a thing. I realized that there was another bridge that had to be gapped, a gap that had to be bridged, rather. A gap that had to be bridged between people who really, really, really wanted and needed to scale their practices, and the fact that there was no such real services. And so I opened a third company. I did it. I opened a third one, and it's called Riseology Consulting. Right? Play on words with Rise Up Counseling, the Rise Up Sessions. Beyond Your Mirror is the eating disorder venture, which is a completely separate story, because I do have a business partner, and we came up with that name together. So Riseology is a bit more of the Zisa brand, right? Because by the way, I'm Zisa. Nice to see you. I should probably have started with that. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I'm also a business owner. And so it's very nice to make your acquaintance now that you finally know my name. And so Riseology Consulting is an offshoot of Rise Up Counseling, of the Rise Up Sessions, and so on, as I was saying, helping clinicians scale. So I have run into several people at this point who have really expressed that they need help with basic little things that we just don't get taught. Do I need a CPA? What kind of bank account do I open? How do I get retirement benefits if I'm self-employed? Do I hire people? How many people do I hire? What's my timeline like? How do I market? Zisa, how do you fill 14 clinicians' caseloads? What do you do? What do you put out there? Do you have any investments? What is an employment lawyer like? And what are some of the metrics that can be used to make sure that your practice is doing well? Those and many other questions are things that Rhizeology Consulting answers in order to help people feel better that they are excellent clinicians and they can be excellent business people, but it is not automatic. It is not necessarily something that is expected or understood. And it is a brain shift, right? It's a brain shift from being a helper to being a business owner. It's a switch that has to be done in the head that for a lot of social workers especially, not just counselors, but social workers, it's very hard to accept because the whole idea is to give, it's not to take. That's what we're taught. That's what the whole idea of becoming a social worker is often about. So when all of a sudden I have to switch to all of a sudden now I'm a taker, right? I'm taking your money, I'm advertising services that are, to take, it becomes very, very difficult for a lot of people. And it becomes a struggle that almost becomes an identity shift, and it can cause a lot of strife for some people. So one of the things that we talk about a lot is to prevent burnout. If you want to be less burnt out, you have to start making a more livable wage. And in order to be making a livable wage, you got to start marketing yourself and take money. And it's not taking people's money necessarily, right? It's deciding whether you want to be with insurance. It's if you don't want to be with insurance, how much are you going to charge? It's what are you going to do? How are you going to make your services more accessible to people without breaking their bank so that they can still keep getting services that they need, right? Because at the end of the day, it's about giving the services. People tend to undercharge a lot, and that causes burnout. And I hate to say it, but we do live in a capitalist world. And as long as we don't make a livable wage, and by that I mean actually have room to breathe, it's very difficult to not burn out. So one of the things that happens when we start finding that scaling is an option, that, like I said, Rhizeology Consulting can help with, and yes, I'm giving it a plug, okay, I'm giving it a plug, is that I can take people's dreams and ideas, and instead of telling them maybe one day, it's okay, so let's strategize. Like, how are we going to do this? How are we going to make sure that you as a person don't burn out? And this is true, by the way, for any business, for anybody who gets into the business world as a byproduct of wherever they're at, right? If I'm again going back to the cook or the mechanic, right? I'm a cook in a kitchen, and now I want to open my own restaurant. Well, got to make that brain shift. Got to make that brain shift between being in the kitchen to running a restaurant, knowing the inventory that needs to be there, the hiring, the firing, the location, the marketing, the websites, the design, the interior design, the exterior design, the maintenance of the space, and so on and so on and so forth. And the same thing with the mechanic. I know how to fix cars. I want to open my own garage. Well, got to make that brain shift. Got to be able to start charging properly. And does that come, by the way, with an initial undercharging stage before you realize that you can actually increase your prices and people are not going to die? Yeah, it does. That's very normal. If that's what you've experienced up till now, sorry, something in my eye. Very, very, very normal. I'll never forget when I first started Rise Up Counseling, my late cancel no-show fee was $75. Now keep in mind that the insurance pays more than that. And if I was charging somebody out of pocket, they were paying less for late cancel no-show fee. So I was terrified, but I upped it to $90, which is still less than the insurance pays, which is still less than what... It took me getting to where I am today before people realized, oh damn, she's serious. Like, we need to make sure that we don't late cancel no-show so that she doesn't charge us. Because it's incredible what a deterrent it is when people have to actually go into their pocket and get a consequence. And speaking of consequences, this is why people stay stuck. So we started talking about that people will stay stuck because they're afraid to keep going. They get comfortable. They start resting on their laurels. They avoid systems. They avoid being willing to delegate. I think I talked about this in the last season, that learning to delegate was the hardest yet most incredible thing I've learned how to do. When I got a clinical director and I was able to say, you take this is your baby now, was one of the hardest things. And as soon as she started taking over, everything changed for me, and I was able to mentally put certain clinical pieces aside that I just did not have time or brain space to do, and insisted on doing them anyway because I was stuck, because I just had to be in charge of everything. And I absolutely do not, because now I have room for what other people are challenged with, which is making difficult business decisions, like hiring and firing, like somebody who doesn't work out because they're just not quite aligned with where I'm at. Somebody can be an excellent clinician, but they're not aligned with what it is that the practice, right, either one of the practices has to offer. They're not going to be able to stay. And as much as I like them as a person, or again, an excellent clinician, I just can't keep them, because it doesn't make sense to be turning business away, to be turning clients away, and on a person level, to not give them the services that they need because that person is not willing to have a broader selection of people they're willing to see. So when I start learning to think like a CEO, and I start learning to think like a business person, doesn't mean I'm going to be a CEO, right? Doesn't mean I have to be a gazillionaire, because most social workers go into this field knowing they're not going to be. It doesn't mean that I have to be broke. It doesn't mean I have to be burnt out. It doesn't mean that I have to be anything but exactly where I want to be. So if I want to be a gazillionaire, good luck, but I mean, it's possible. If I want to scale up, just scale up. Whatever I have, bring it to the next level. It's possible. It's doable. It's thinking strategically. It's being willing to think strategically. It's being willing to think outside the box. It's asking for help and being willing to accept it when it's offered, which is, oh my God, so hard. And it's being willing to let go once I realize that I don't have to be in survival mode 24/7. Survival mode of paying my bills and being present and not burning out and having a family and running errands. And since I opened Risology, I have gotten a personal assistant because I couldn't even fathom making my own appointments to doctors anymore. Who's got the fucking time? They found a mass on my liver. It's probably nothing. It's probably a hemangioma, which just means it's a cluster of blood vessels, and it's fine, and I can just leave it be. But they want to make sure that in case it's something, fine. I didn't want to make that appointment. Who's got time to think about having cancer? Like, what? Who's got time to think that I have to go and do that if I don't have cancer? Like, leave me alone. So I had my assistant make the appointment because it still has to get done. I still need to not be, dying if I'm dying. Go and make the time to do the thing, but do it. And strategically thinking, for me to not do it at all is really stupid, because if I am dying and it could be prevented, then let's do that. And if I am dying and it can't be prevented, I'm going to go live on an island somewhere. And if I'm not dying, I can just go about my life and not wonder if I'm dying. So the point is that not literal survival mode is what I was meaning before, but this is a great example, that to get out of that that mode of I have to do it because if I don't, the world's going to crash, and I have to do it on little pay or little sleep, or that none of that is necessary if I'm able to strategize. For example, one of the things that I struggle with at this point more than anything else, because I exercise, I eat relatively okay, I work on a work-life balance. There's a reason why I'm sitting here on a Sunday and doing this, because I have the time now, with assistants and with admins and with, delegating. One of the things I really struggle with is going to sleep on time. My sleep hygiene is horrendous. I stink to high heaven on a hygiene level when it comes to sleep. I don't sleep enough. I sleep very poorly when I do. Is part of that to do with PTSD nightmares? Yeah, sure, but I'm not going to blame all of it on that. The truth is that when I go to sleep at 3 in the morning, it's because I wanted to. Most of the time, it's not because I had to, and it's not because I'm, it's because of FOMO. It's because I don't want the day to end. It's because I work really well at night because I'm ADHD, and it's it's just easier for me to start working at 8 p.m. than to start working at 8 a.m. Thinking strategically, that is a terrible, terrible, terrible strategic move. And one of the reasons I'm bringing it up as an example is so I can be accountable to you about the fact that this is what I'm doing, and so that maybe I'll change it, and I'll keep you updated on that. So that strategically speaking, I can actually start seeing better results in my work and in my life from when I sleep better and when I'm doing more. And that ability to think like a CEO, I know it's, you hear this a lot, but I'm telling you this from my own personal experience. It really does come down to things like that. It comes down to sleep. It comes down to taking time to have lunch. It comes down to taking time to see friends and family and just scroll on TikTok for a moment. I don't have TikTok, but I'll scroll on Reels. Same shit. It's going on a date, when I first got divorced about 1.5 years ago, I couldn't think about looking at anyone for about 8 months. And now just going on a date, just taking the time to do that, talking to people. Because I'm strategizing, I have the time and the space and the mental ability to do all those things. Because I think strategically, because I'm, granted, single, no children, no pets, right? So I have a lot of freedom, but that also means that I could, and for a lot of people should be, living and sleeping my businesses. But instead, I really do try to make it a point that I think strategically so that when I do wake up at 4 in the morning and my brain is going, I'll write it all down and take care of it the next day. And the rest of the time, I spread myself so that I'm not too thin, pun intended, and that I'm able to actually get everything done that needs to get done. Because I will, if I don't have the right help, sit there paralyzed when I'm overwhelmed and I don't even know where to start. So when I'm able to delegate and I'm able to just call my assistant and rattle off 25 things that have to get done, and she puts it all down on a sheet and prioritizes it and makes sure it gets done, that's a strategic move. I am spending money on this person's salary so that I could afford to not burn out and not get stuck and continue growing. It is really incredible what happens when I strategize for the businesses. Not just on a giving other people advice level, right, at Riseology, but using Riseology and seeing where am I, where do I want to be, right? Rise Up is doing well. We are leaving it where it's at. We're hiring, we're firing, we're still don't believe in wait lists, so that when we have too many people, we keep hiring. Beyond Your Mirror is very close to being operational as an IOP. Amazing. Riseology is brand new, right? It's just a couple months old, which means there's still strategizing to be done. There's still, how do I do this? Is my pricing correct? Is it too high? Is it too low? Am I branding properly? Am I marketing properly? All of those things. So what I want to leave you with today is the idea that to be a great cook does not mean I have to be a great mechanic. But if I'm a great cook and I learn how to be a great mechanic, now I could be a food truck that is self-sustaining. Just because I'm an excellent clinician does not mean that I'm automatically going to be an amazing or a terrible CEO. It just means that with the proper support and the proper protective factors, and maybe leveraging my risk factors, right? Protective factors being things that could be helpful and risk factors being things that could be detrimental. But I can leverage those things, like we talked about last season, things like trauma and grief and coming up in a very, very difficult background and using that as a way to use hyper independence, I think it was, to talk about how to use that to my advantage. All of those things will allow that therapist to stop being stuck and be a business person, and will allow that cook to open his own food truck and be able to sustain that food truck himself. They're two completely different things, but they can be in unison if I allow them, if I ask for help and accept it, And if I'm willing and able to take this platform and utilize it to what I want it to be, to avoid burnout. And I think that's relatable to a lot of different fields, not just business and not just psychology. Certainly with people who come from a difficult background, it is possible. So if you're related to any of this, risologyconsulting.com, riseupcounseling.net for therapy, and beyondyourmirror.com for eating disorder and trauma facility for adolescents and adults. Just a little plug there. If you want information on all of the above, you can go to zisalevineservices.com, ZISALEVINE services.com, and I will see you on the next episode. Have a great one.
Thanks for listening to the Rise Up Sessions. If this episode resonated with you, follow the podcast, and I'll see you next time.